Have you ever said no to an opportunity because you were afraid of like what would happen if you said yes, or like some of the consequences?
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about, have you ever looked at an opportunity and you just thought to yourself like, I don't think it's worth it. She ain't worth it.
Yes. Yes, I've definitely done that multiple times. Some things are just not worth it, man.
Well, today, that's the topic. We're going to dive into what to do when you're afraid of taking the next step or you see an opportunity, but you're scared about it. Like the title of the episode is Quit Avoiding Pain. And we want to talk about like, don't just be afraid of pain. Like, spoiler alert, not all pain is bad. Welcome to the Let's Quit podcast.
Quitting is not always a bad thing.
If you have the right mindset, quitting can be the most powerful tool you have on your journey to success. It's certainly been helpful for us.
Whether it's flying through hurricanes, building our businesses, or just trying to get to bed on time, we're always trying to level up and improve our lives.
This is the show where we share the lessons, experiences, and friends that have helped us live this incredible life. So let's quit the bad and grow the good together.
All right, well, we want to thank all of our listeners today. If you're brand new and this is your very first time listening to us, or it is literally your 8th time listening to us talk at you for 40 minutes, thank you for supporting us. We really appreciate you. And thank you to everybody else out on Patreon who supports us. I mean, you make it possible to do what we do. We are still a listener-sponsored podcast.
And even if we had a sponsor, we couldn't do this without your help. So thank you so much. If you'd like to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/jennieanddavis, sign up for the tier that fits you best, and we'd be eternally grateful.
You're the real MVP.
That being said, what have you been up to this week? Well, first off, can I just rant a little bit? This is the 3rd time we've recorded this podcast.
Okay, things keep happening. And for once, it's actually not our fault. Like equipment issues.
It's our fault.
Okay, well, it's all our fault, technically.
It's always your fault.
It's always your fault. But it's the equipment has just, I mean, the mics cut out recording because something wasn't plugged in.
It's just software problem. It's computers. It just happens, which is why we build into our schedule extra time to make it happen. I mean, we normally record on Monday afternoons, and it's Wednesday afternoon today that we're recording. So
I know, that's how long we had to delay to get this to work.
So you're in for either a very quick episode or
an extra fun episode because we're like, we got to get recorded.
I know.
Let's go.
It's going to be hard because like I've said these things 3 times.
But each time in like a different way, I feel like.
I don't know, like I'm afraid we're going to miss something because we're going to think, oh, I already said that, but it was 2 days ago.
I know.
Anyway.
Stick with us. It's going to be a fantastic
It'll be a
week.
Fun show nonetheless. So anyway, what have we been up to this week for the 3rd time? Explain.
For the 3rd time. Our channel has definitely been growing a lot over the last week, which is really nice. It feels good to be able to put out videos consistently because if you don't know, it's almost like YouTube likes it when you consistently post content on their platform.
Go figure. If you post good content that the algorithm likes, they show your stuff to more people. It's funny.
I know. And if you keep doing it over and over again, they seem to like that. So that's been awesome. But that's another thank you to you guys for like checking out our content over the last couple weeks and especially this last week. So thank you so much.
Right. We also like with our social media growth, like it finally clicked for us. So we've got a furniture business in the Houston area. We're trying to build cutting and charcuterie boards for real estate agents, and then hopefully just larger furniture pieces to the more wealthy people in the Houston area. Right. And so that's sort of our business model. But we started reaching out to some of these real estate agents, and what we found is like we don't need to just ignore the fact that the Jennie and Davis accounts exist. Yeah. We first started reaching out with just our business account, which was kind of like cold. Like it looks like a corporate account.
Right.
It doesn't feel personal. And we're reaching out to these real estate agents who most of them,
people.
Their real estate account is their personal account.
Yeah.
So it just feels disconnected. So we started using the Jennie and Davis Instagram account, which has 8,000 followers. And spoiler alert, people respond to an account 10 times bigger than them way more often than they respond to somebody with just 100 followers.
Because, I mean, it comes down to like people are people, and, you know, you're kind of playing the high school popularity game again where it's like, oh, you have 8,000 followers. Okay, I'll respond to you now versus, oh, you only have 200 followers, which it's a shame, but you have to kind of take that into account for a small fraction of the people we're talking to.
It's not that like... I mean, you could say that really negatively. You could say, "Oh, it's just like high school. Nobody wants to talk to you unless you're popular."
But it's not always a negative.
that it's not even conscious. Like in high school, it might be like super conscious of like, oh, that kid's weird, I don't want to talk to him. But like, at least when you're a grown up, we hide it better.
Yeah. Right.
It's like, oh, like, of course I want to respond to them. Like they have more credibility because they're a larger following, which may or may not be the case. There's plenty of people on Instagram that have zero credibility that are like spam accounts. So it's just crazy to see like high school playing out again with adults.
It's just an odd dynamic.
Anyway, so we're just trying to make our money and do good in the world and move on. We try not to like look too hard at those sort of things because then it can start to get depressing and then your mindset's thrown off. And anyway, it's just...
We're doing what works best for us with the situation we've been given, which is pretty much all you can do.
Right, because I'd be like, if I was trying to give advice to somebody who had two Instagram, that's why we started this, is because we said, what if somebody came to us and they said, I've got 2 Instagram accounts, one's got 8,000 followers, one's got 100, who should I be reaching out to people with?
We'd be like,
I'd smack them upside the head if they wanted to use the smaller account. So we're just trying to take some of our own advice and like, I don't know, just have the best credibility because we have a good product for a fair price. And even though price is arbitrary, like we have plenty of real estate agents. So why not do everything that we can to increase the odds that we do business together?
Right. And that's kind of just like the beginning steps of figuring out our processes for talking to these realtors. Because at first we were like, yeah, let's message them with our business account, because then if they click on it, they're going to be able to see all the things we build. And that's who they're going to be buying the board from. So it really makes most logical sense to reach out with that account. And then we actually do it and we're like, ooh, no, it doesn't.
Nobody cares.
People feel more attached and more willing to respond to a larger account. So we're like, hey, if that's what works, we'll pivot.
Right. And some people would say, just listening to the YouTube commenters that are imaginarily typing now, but like people will say, oh, that's cheating. You can't use your woodworking channel to then go sell. It's like, why not?
Why not?
Says who? Says who? That's why we rebranded to be Jennie. Like our woodworking business used to be our YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's cheating. Like it's just using the personal relationship aspect of it, which is what most sales revolve around.
Yeah.
Is the relationship side. Until you're doing several $1 million in sales every year, your sale is wholly because you've got a relationship with that consumer. And at some extent, even the bigger corporations. I mean, some people would feel that they have a relationship with Apple. You spend a lot of money with them.
Yeah.
That's the relationship.
Yeah,
but like,
I mean,
some people feel like Apple's their friend. It's a great company. Like people befriend these companies all the time. And so you need to leverage your relationships and your credibility on the personal side.
Especially in the beginning.
Because nobody really wants to engage with a corporate account. Like they just don't. Unless it's like Wendy's scary. Or something funny like that. But
yeah, because they're funny.
Even then, Wendy, she's got a personality.
I know.
It's not because it's a corporate account. It's because the Wendy's Twitter account, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go Google this. But like the Wendy's Twitter account and Burger King and all the rest, like they have personalities online. So people are forming relationships and those are the people that are winning. It's not the corporate, like, I don't know, Oracle software or Microsoft account where it's all corporate. Nobody wants to talk to them.
Because we started putting ourselves in their shoes. We're like, hey, we get messages from people on Instagram pretty often. And we're like, what messages are we more apt to respond to? Something that looks very corporate and like formal and written. We're like, dang it, this is somebody trying to sell me something. Let's be honest. So we took some of our own advice and experience where we're like, hey, let's not look like those kind of people in other people's DMs, because that's what kind of throws us off, or like,
right.
You know,
so quick lesson,
not to
like,
look at
if
it.
I'm going to pull a lesson out of this rabbit hole that we've been down, like if you're struggling or if you've got a mental block of like, oh, I think that's cheating, like push back on that. Like if you've got this mentally imposed limit of like, oh, I can't do that, or oh, I there's no way I could do that, that's cheating. Like don't cheat, but like,
yeah,
reconsider that. Like according to who?
Where's the rule? Where is it written that says you legally can't do that?
Is that and don't do anything illegal, but like,
right.
Is that just you putting a self-imposed limit because you're afraid? Oh, whoa, I didn't even mean for this to tie in. Because you're afraid of the opportunity coming. Like don't avoid the pain just because you're afraid of it. So anyway.
Oh, third time's the charm, guys. I'm so glad we had to record this podcast.
But now we're going to undo it because we're going to keep talking about what we did this week. So back to reality.
Take it for what it was. Okay, what else have we done this week?
We reorganized the shop. We just did a shop tour. We built new cart. We got one of those Uline like push carts to help move stuff around the shop, which is really helping with productivity and stuff. Because like with a hobbyist shop, like everything is set up ready to go. You might need any tool at any time, so you got to go. But like when you're doing production work, it makes sense to take 20 minutes, rearrange the garage so you can have an optimized workflow. Mm-hmm. So I feel like our garage now is a tool itself.
Yeah.
It's not just a place where all the tools are. The garage can be modular and set up as its own tool. So that's been fun.
We're consistently making like small tweaks every time we go through a process, or we'll make a batch of cutting boards and we'll notice like one other little thing that we could fix and make better. So hopefully, as we go and iterations of our shop will finally reach the most optimized one, or as close as we can.
Right. We talked a little bit about this already. We're trying to find open houses just to give boards away to real estate agents and stuff. Response has been amazing so far. We've gone to a few open houses and reached out to a couple of real estate agents on Instagram, and like it's just straight up giving. Like we're just giving them a cutting board. We talked about that in the YouTube video this week, but like our sales plan is just to give the board away because it only costs us $30 to make. And hopefully like all we got to, if out of, let's say we talk to 5 realtors, only 2 of them have to ever buy one board from us, and we break even. So all we need is, what did I say? 2 realtors out of 5, or did I say 3? We just need a fraction of the realtors we approach to buy at least one board from us, which I don't think that's the case. I think we're building a relationship with these real estate agents. If they buy one from us, they're going to buy 5 or 6.
Yeah.
I don't think that this is a one-time buy product. I don't know. We'll see.
But yeah, we are getting a lot of good responses from them, especially because they see it as like an act of kindness, which is really interesting. It is. You're giving somebody a gift, but they're just so shocked by that, because even if it's something that's business related, like, hey, I want you to buy my cutting boards and give it to your homeowners. That's a business transaction, but we're offering it to them in such a relational, friendly way.
I mean,
they're shocked.
Let's be really objective here. What's the purpose of a relationship in your life?
Yeah,
it's to trade favors back and forth. Now, it's not. It shouldn't be transactional. You shouldn't keep score, but like that's the whole point of a relationship is that when you need me, I'm there for you, and when I need you, you're there for me. Like,
very true.
That's what a relationship is. And like, just because money is involved, as long as you're not keeping score, as long as you're not getting jealous and you're not keeping score, then it's a healthy relationship. Once you start to like attack it and put like system on it and say, no, you owe me 5 more cutting board purchases because I gave you 5 and a discount, and then Sally, and then your niece, and I gave you a wedding gift. Like, that's when things start to get hostile. So as long as like we don't keep score, I don't care. Like, that's good business. That's making a relationship and, fostering it. So I don't see
there's your dose of relationship therapy for the week.
Yep.
We'll talk to you next time. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh man, we would be terrible marriage counselors. Just both of you, stop being stupid.
Let's be objective here. Everybody write down your pro and con list, and then we'll go through the logic-based definitions of. People will be like, I'm done. I'm out.
Anyway, did we mention in the YouTube video that we're not good with emotions?
I know. We'd be like, would you just shut up, stop crying.
So on that note, like, sales scares us. So like, we are not the type of people, we alluded to this in the YouTube video, but we are not the kind of people that are emotional focused people. We have emotions, we just don't respect them. We don't give them the time that we really need to process them. Now, that comes with its own pros and cons, but like, listen to me, like talking about pros and cons of like not having emotions enough, but we have them. It's just we don't process them at a high enough priority. So we ignore them, we stuff them down, which gets us into trouble sometimes. But I feel like we've learned in the last couple of years that like you just got to make time for it.
Yeah.
Like let it, like vent it appropriately, go through these emotions and stuff. And so when we approach something like sales, and I think that's why we're afraid of sales. We're not afraid of rejection. We've built a business before. We've been rejected plenty of times. That's not a fear. It's just, it's when people buy things, that's an emotional time. There's a relationship involved between the buyer and the seller. There's like money involved, which people are emotionally attached to. People are excited about the possibility of buying a new thing. Like, it's a very emotional time when you make a purchase. Yeah, you got reasons, like logic can go into like what model you buy one over the other. But like, if you're excited about buying a new car, yeah, you could buy a truck because it makes sense or like whatever. But like deep down, the decision to buy is emotional.
Like
I want a new truck. Yeah. My old one broke down and I want a newer one. I don't want to just buy a similar old one again. Like, the point of purchasing is emotional. And that's where we get weird.
Right. Because we're like, well, what if, we almost don't want to like deal with the emotional part of the transaction. Like, oh, what if they don't like what we're selling? Then we have to deal with the fact that they don't like it. Not necessarily for any logical reasons,
I
but
think
like,
it's just because we are aware of the fact that we don't manage our own emotions, and we're worried about our ability to manage somebody else's emotions, because we don't even take time for ourselves to do it. Like, now we're going to go out of our way and babysit somebody else's emotional state. So like, that's why we've got the mental block there. That's my guess. I don't know. Could be wrong.
And I think it's hard because you have to get to, like, for somebody to be invested in a product you're selling and want to buy one, you have to get them emotionally on board before they're willing to sit there and listen to all your reasons for why they should buy it. Like,
right. Or you just find somebody
people
who's already interested, and then you just give them enough reasons that they'll pull the trigger.
Yeah.
That's what we propose to do. So many people, we get DMs and messages from people all the time. They're like, how do I convince people that my stuff is better than IKEA? And like, we tell them you can't.
Yeah.
You're not going to like bang it against their head that your stuff is better. Like, the emotional part there is their money. They're too afraid to part with their money, so they buy the cheaper one instead of actually getting the quality thing. So don't focus on that customer. Go find the guy that actually wants a nice cutting board. Go find the spouse that really wants a nice bedroom set.
Yeah, where the emotion's not tied to the money.
They don't care how much it costs. Mm-hmm. That's the customer you're looking for. And so anyway, I say all that to say, like, sales has been really scary for us. Like, this is our transition to the title topic. If I announce it, it works better.
Yes.
So if, like, we're scared of sales, but that shouldn't keep us from doing sales, because, like, the future of our business depends on it. Our goals depend on doing sales, a lot of sales.
Yeah.
And yeah, we could hire somebody and do that, but that's not taking responsibility of it for ourselves. If all of our salespeople leave, or they get mad, or one guy like gets hit by a pie truck, God forbid, like, we have to take responsibility for the sales process.
Right.
We can't just outsource it because we're scared of it.
You have to, at some level, you have to be able to own each part of your business if you have to. Like, yeah, you're going to have salespeople. Yeah, you're going to have builders. But like...
That's E-Myth by Michael Gerber.
Yes.
Great book for like life, not just business, but like it's an entrepreneur's book. But like, oh my gosh, you take those principles to heart in your personal life, man, you're going to be on a rocket ship to the moon to your goals.
Yeah.
E-Myth by Michael Gerber. We'll put it in the show notes. But... yeah, so I guess that's it.
That's our point. So let's dive into the
title topic.
Dive
jingle.
into the title topic. Yes.
Let's go.
All right. So this week's quote is from Jordan Peterson, and it is, "Do what is meaningful, not what is expedient."
That sounds like a great chapter from a book.
Oh yeah, it sounds kind of like a rule.
Oh, like maybe one of 12.
Yeah, I think 1 of 12 rules, I'd say so.
If you're not familiar, Jordan Peterson has a book called 12 Rules for Life. One of the chapters is titled, "Do what is meaningful, not what is expedient." So This is more than a quote. It's a chapter in his book. Really great book. Again, we'll put it in the show notes. But yeah, so that's kind of that's our approach to pain, like avoiding pain. Like, do what is going to give you the most meaning. Don't do what's easiest or fastest. So when we say, let's unpack this. When we say quit avoiding pain, we're not saying endure suffering for the sake of suffering.
Right.
We are not one of those people. There's plenty of them on social media, but like, we are not about suffering just for the sake of suffering. Even though there's character building in it, even though there's like lessons you can glean from it.
That's not what we're talking about on this.
We're talking about like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Mm-hmm. Don't sit through pain unless it's worth it to you.
Yeah.
Right? And then find the way that's going to give you the most of what you want. And then see if the pain is worth it. So that's what we mean by quit avoiding pain. Don't run away from something. We have a personal value. So we got a bunch of like personal values. Maybe we'll share the list one day. But one of our personal values is fear is not a reason. We say that all the time when we're faced with a new opportunity, or we're uncomfortable, or we're in like a weird emotional state. We just say, okay, fear is part of the equation, but it can't be a reason we don't do this.
Right.
Fear changes. What you're afraid of when you're 10 years old is not what you're afraid of when you're 20 years old.
So it's something very subjective, and therefore you can't build upon it. Like, you're not going to build upon a foundation that is shifting.
Right.
Constantly.
We talked about this in a previous episode. Like, you can't build on a constantly moving, like shifting foundation. And if your emotional state is movable, which everybody's is, your emotional state is not the same from day to day. So you can't build on emotions that change day to day.
Which fear is one of those.
Well, I hope so. I hope you're not constantly living in fear. I mean, we know some people like that, but you got some other problems to sort out first.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely have the ability to live constantly in fear, but
you do.
Not recommended. Not recommended.
But yeah, so don't avoid pain for the sake of just being afraid of something. Like, seriously consider it. Now put it off to the side. So our first point we want to make is that not all pain is bad. Like, you shouldn't run from pain, because pain is a good thing for us.
Right. Like going to the gym. You know, you run a couple miles, your lungs are on fire. You're like, oh, why am I doing this to myself? And then you go do a leg day. 2 days later, you can barely walk up the stairs to get to your office at work. And you're like, man, this is painful. Why did I do this to myself? But then you're an overall healthy individual.
Right.
Not all pain is bad.
The next time you get chased by a cheetah, you're going to be really happy you did leg day.
Yeah. Last time I got chased by a cheetah, I was so thankful that... No, I'm just kidding.
But that's a good type of pain. Like at some point, parts of your body don't even engage until you're in pain or in a stressful situation. Like, you've got this whole system in your body that doesn't even turn on till you've been fasting, till you've been pain, like muscle building and repair doesn't happen until you've gone through pain. And also just as quick as burning your hand on the stove, that's a good pain. It keeps you from hurting yourself. Yeah, it hurts your hand, but it saves you from losing your hand. So pain is not inherently bad. You just got to look at the context around it.
Right. The way we kind of point our pain or vector it toward what we're doing or thinking, that's what's bad.
Right. So I think we're just beating a dead horse here, but also breaking up with somebody who's toxic, a relationship. There's a lot of pain to go through the breakup process, but you probably are going to be better on the opposite side if that person is toxic. So just because there's pain doesn't mean you don't need to go through it. So,
or constructive criticism. That's painful to hear sometimes. You're like, oh, please don't tell me what you didn't like about what I just did.
Man, you really want to know somebody's character, their ability to take constructive criticism. Now, not rude criticism, not mean, not mean-spirited deconstruction, but constructive criticism. That, I think, is one of the litmus tests to personal character is can you internalize personal criticism or constructive criticism well? And if you get defensive, if you get fighty, I'm not going to waste my time with somebody who's not able to take constructive criticism. It's just there's more people out there that are open-minded and more positive that can handle it. So anyway, that's just that in the grocery cart. Have you seen that meme?
The what?
The grocery cart. So there's this thing on the internet now, one of the tests, the ultimate litmus test of human character, whether you're a good person or a bad person, if there's good and evil people in the world.
Oh, yes, I've seen this meme.
Is whether or not you put the grocery cart back in the stall in the parking lot at the grocery store. Because it's something that takes almost no time to do.
That's so true.
It's very little effort on your part, but it's it does so much for the people around you. Imagine if the whole parking lot was full of shopping carts, which sometimes it is.
Yeah,
it's a nightmare for everybody around. So the litmus test of character is do you care enough about your surroundings and your fellow human beings that you put the shopping cart back in the stall, or do you just leave it where you are? Now, some people are in a rush. Sometimes you're on the opposite end of the parking lot from it. I get it. There's exceptions.
But we're talking about when you have the opportunity to do it.
9 times out of 10, you don't put that shopping cart back. I think you're a scumbag.
Yeah.
Sorry. I know I just offended a percentage of the listenership, but I don't care. If you are so self-involved that you can't pull your head out of your own butt and do something that takes 10 seconds.
I know.
Man, what?
And then it's so funny because there's people on the other side of the spectrum that are they'll go way out of their way. There's sometimes where the cart corral will be on the other side of the parking lot, and I'm pushing it. I'm I know, I say this because that's me. And I'm oh, I'll just walk all the way across the parking lot and put it back. And Davis is really? Everybody, there's a special spot in the parking lot where they want you to put it so you don't have to walk all the way across. I'm no, it's okay. So there's some people
we're not just talking about Jennie putting it back in the cart corral in the parking lot. Jennie will walk it back to the front of the store so that the cart wrangler person doesn't have to do his job.
Yeah, don't go that far.
Those are the tryhards. Those people are equally as terrible as the ones who leave it out in the middle of the parking lot.
But at least I do put the cart back where it's supposed to go normally.
Anyway, moving on. Not all pain is bad. The second point we want to make is, I don't know, Jennie, you want to make this one?
Yes. So second point is when you think you're avoiding pain, when you're I'm just going to kind of circumnavigate it, maybe avoid it a little bit. You're not. You're just rescheduling it. That's simply all you're doing. It's going to come back around at another time, and maybe even be more painful than if you would have just endured it at the beginning.
Right. Yeah. So I've got a little story prepared for this one. Again, this is the third time I've told this story.
Oh, it gets better every time.
Oh, thanks.
Well, yeah. Well, when I say better, you'll know what I mean by quote unquote like better when you hear the story. I don't know if it could get better based on the content of the story.
Well, those of you that are eating right now are going to benefit from the fact this is the third time I've told this story, because the first time I did not give this warning. So if you're eating right now, please stop eating or pause the podcast.
Pick
and
it
come
back up
to
later
when you're done. There we go. So you're welcome. So a couple months ago, I went to Air Force's survival training as part of our training as air crew members with the hurricane hunters. And so part of that class is that you go out into the woods for 7 to 10 days and they teach you how to like go camping. Well, not camping.
Oh,
but
it's not like fun. I mean, we had a good time, but it's not like fun vacation
It's survival
time
camping. Like you're bushwhacking, you're not on a trail, you're trying not to be found. That's the whole purpose, is that if you crash land somewhere in a country like that,
you're in a bad situation. You got to get out, right?
You got to learn how to camp and survive and eat wild animals and that sort of thing. So one of the things that we do is they teach you how to kill, clean, and like cook a wild animal.
Because some people have never hunted in their lives before.
Right. And like some people never even camped outdoors before. It's a fun school. But there were a couple of rabbits with our group and we kept them for a day or two. And then there was one night where the instructor was like, all right, it's time to make dinner. And so they started teaching us how to like kill and appropriately clean an animal, so you can get ready to eat it. And so right before we started cooking it, so we skinned it and we just had the rabbit carcass there ready to start cooking. The skins and stuff were still laying off to the side, and there's a small group of us that kind of got along together, like in the larger group. You know how cliques and people work. So this little small group of 4 of us, most of us had like cleaned animals before, or like been hunting, and so we weren't too disturbed by it. But one of the guys was like, "Hey, you can just like eat the eyeballs raw," and we're like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, like you can just take it, and, like it's full of protein, and, like it's got a weird texture and a flavor, and like okay, it's like a delicacy in some countries, like so." We walk over and we pick up the rabbit heads, and one by one, like everybody was taking the rabbit head and like sucking the eyeball out and then eating it. I told you. Hey,
this is practice for when you need to like survive for your life in the wilderness. So maybe you might one day need to, potentially do this. But
so,
anyways,
it got to my turn, and I was the last one to go, and I passed. I've sort of always been a picky eater. I'm way better than I used to be, but I've just always been sort of a picky eater. And I got to me and I said no. I was like, guys, no, not me, not this time. I'll pass on this one. I am so mad at myself for saying no.
Yeah.
I am more angry that I said no and that I don't have that shared experience with those guys and that I don't have that story to tell. I've got an embarrassing story to tell. I'm more upset that I didn't do it than I was grossed out if I had done it.
Yeah.
And like, had I slowed down and thought about that,
like, hey, how am I going to feel 6 months from now?
Had I thought about how I was going to feel about this 6 months from now, I would have just done it without even thinking, because that would have been such a cool story to have, like a cool experience to have. I don't care if you're grossed out. I thought it would be cool. Like, there was more pain for me not doing it than there was temporary pain of me doing it. And so that's kind of the point we're trying to make, is like, when you say no to an opportunity because you're afraid of it, you're not just avoiding the pain. You're rescheduling it. It's like a lump in the rug. You push it down in one area, it pops up somewhere else. Now, it may or may not be more or less pain up front or down the road. And that's what you've got to like ask yourself, which then like gets us into our third point. Like, the things that you want to accomplish are going to require pain.
Yep.
And you have to ask yourself, when do I want to take that pain on? Do I want it up front? Do I want to eat it all at the beginning? Do I want to eat the frog? There's a book titled that about like doing the most difficult thing on your task list first.
Yeah.
And then it motivates you to do the little things. You can take the pain up front and then the rest of your time is easy. Or you can ignore it and then have a tidal wave of pain and depression at the end of it, which is what Gary Vaynerchuk talks about. Like when he went to nursing homes and was asking people about regret, he said, you see people like breaking down because they had passed on so many opportunities in life and that they regretted at the end of their life. And he says the grief in their eyes is almost unbearable to look at, much less experience yourself.
Like it's additive, and it gets so much worse the longer you wait. Because I feel like that level of like pain or missed experience gets heavier and heavier as you go throughout your life sometimes.
Right. And so all I'm saying is like, you've got to decide when you want the pain. Don't think that you're just going to shrink out of it and never get to it again. You're just rescheduling it. And then the third thing is like, your goals require it. If you are anybody trying to accomplish any sort of goal, whether that's run a business, whether that's change careers, whether that's just improve yourself, like
eat healthy, get in shape.
Oh my gosh, any amount of goal that you have is going to require some amount of pain, and you have to like consciously choose when you're going to take it. And most of the time, if you take the pain up front, it is less pain overall.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but most times, if you take the pain up front, do the hard, dirty work up front, it'll take a little bit longer. It won't be as fun, but you will be better off long term, because then you can focus all your time, effort, and energy on the next thing that's bigger and better and greater in the future. So
absolutely,
that's pretty much our like 3 points. Let's bring it home with some action steps. So the first action step.
Did you hit the bell?
I did hit the bell, but I restarted the computer, so it's going to take a minute. There it is.
I was about to say, can't have an action step without the bell.
First action step. Avoid running from pain by saying fear is not a reason next time you're faced with a hard decision.
And I think when we say this is, it's, if you think about reasons why you might not want to take an opportunity or might not want to do something, like fear can't be a concrete player in that. For example, if you got a new job or you were offered a new job, it might be further away. You say, oh, I don't know if I want to take this new job because it's a longer commute than I originally have. I'm going to work slightly longer hours on Mondays and Wednesdays, and I won't be able to take my kids to practice. And you know, I'm going to be higher up on the totem pole, and I'll have more responsibility. And you know what? I'm really scared of that responsibility because what if I screw up and they don't like me anymore? Okay, well, the what if I screw up, that's not an actual reason. That's just you fearing a reason. So that can't be calculated into your whole like risk management. There's a time to sit down and respect that fear and kind of dissect it and see why you're afraid of it. But it can't go into the concrete list of like why you're not going to do something.
Right. That's one of the reasons that like I hate pro and con lists. You love them, but like I hate them because the pro and con list doesn't show you the weight of each item on the list. It shows you the number of items,
right?
But like those items weigh differently.
So it's almost like you have to rank your pro and con list. Kind
right.
Of deal.
There might be 5 good reasons for me to stay in the Air Force, like full time, like on active duty. There might be 5 good reasons with the retirement benefits and all that, but like the one bad reason of like not having enough time for a family or not making enough money to do what I want with my family, like that's so heavy. I don't care about the other reasons. I'm going to quit every single time because it's not worth it. Like the juice is not worth the squeeze, and a pro and con list doesn't tell you about the worth of any of the items on the list.
The gravity of each thing.
Now, it can help you outline them, it can help you see them, but like, I don't know. So I don't like pro and con lists. So the second action step is if you do make a pro and con list, or like if you write out all the variables, the ins and outs of the equation, like you were talking about with the job, like, you know, it takes longer to get to work, but I make more money. There's, you know, when you're doing the calculus of should I take this opportunity or not, write your fears off to the side. Give your fears their own column. Like sit physically, write them down. Like Jennie and I have done this. We've had conversations and we've written them on the whiteboard.
We're like, okay, reasons aside, like let's just talk about what we're scared of right now. Let's give it time. Give it 10 minutes, and we're just going to talk about everything we're afraid of. Just vent and get it all out, and then go from there. You
know, this reminds me of Lost. I think it's the pilot episode of season 1 of Lost, if you guys remember that show. The main guy, Jack, is like sewing up some girl and giving stitches, and like he's trying to get her to calm down to help him or whatever. And he says, like, allow yourself 15 seconds, count backwards from 15. And he's like, let yourself be afraid. And then after the 15 seconds, don't be afraid anymore. If you give time for your emotions to play out, then they are much easier to manage. But if you're constantly trying to keep them at bay and stuff them down
like and
then solve the problem, which is what we do all the freaking time.
This is why it's like, this is such a not sensitive, but like we have so much passion behind this topic because this is something we've had to learn through like so many failed attempts at like giving our emotions or like fear the time it needs and then sidestepping to the real reasons.
Right. I don't have any hard research on this, but like I would bet like people that get migraines are the ones that are constantly like not processing emotions. Again, I'm not a doctor. I have no proof on this.
We are simply entrepreneurs and woodworkers.
But my guess is that people that have stress headaches and tension headaches are those type of people like us that stuff down there. Because we both get tension headaches.
Yeah.
Pretty bad. If we don't like work out consistently and if we don't manage our emotions, like we're going to get a headache and it's going to last a couple days and it's going to suck. But like, anyway, that's just my stupid theory this week.
Maybe.
I'm not a doctor. Please consult your physician.
Definitely not a doctor.
Anyway, so back to the action step. Just separate your fear from your risk analysis. So write it off to the side, schedule time to come back to your emotional state and process it, and then you can work on the ins and outs of whether or not this is a good decision. That way the fear doesn't blind you from seeing the good sides of an opportunity.
Exactly. And then let's see, action step number 3. Hey, there we are. Think about the long-term implications of your decisions. I feel like this is something we say all the time, like, oh, well, there's consequences. I don't know. Like, I feel like that's something parents say all the time. Like, there's consequences to your actions. Well,
you got to ask yourself, if I take the fear up front or if I take the pain up front, what's going to happen? Am I going to be happier on the back end? Is it worth the pain up front?
Sometimes it may not be.
Sometimes it's just not. And then you look at it and you say, okay, if I ignore this thing that I'm scared of, am I going to, is it going to come back to bite me? If it does come back to bite me, when? Am I going to be better prepared for it to bite me later?
Yeah.
A lot of times in business, we're like this. So I can't think of a really good example off the top of my head, but in a business, sometimes you can't solve problems that future you just has to worry about. Like right now, with our business, we don't have a lawyer on staff to handle lawsuits.
Right, or writing up some sort of agreement that we'd need
No, we could find one if somebody sued us, but right now, we are not taking the pain up front because it's better for us just to get started and get rolling with some cash, and then we can write legal policies and hire a lawyer on retainer to make sure that we're doing everything correctly. Sometimes it's worth it to take that gamble and say, look, I'll take the pain on the back end, just as long as you're not ignoring it, as long as you understand, hey, at some point, and we have it written down somewhere, at some point of profitability in our business, we need to sit down and have a lawyer be on retainer or whatever. We did the same thing with a CPA.
Yeah.
We just set aside money for taxes and at the end of the year filed Schedule C. And then after a couple of years of doing that, we said, okay, now it's time for us to be grown ups, sit down with an accountant. And they were shocked that we had done so much organization with our bookkeeping. It's you got to respect the level that you're on. So sometimes it is worth it to save the pain for later. But you have got to think through the long-term implications of your decisions.
Right.
You can't just keep gunslinging and taking it day by day all the time.
Right. Yep. And really asking yourself, am I okay with the results if I say no to a certain opportunity? Will you be able to handle that? Mentally, emotionally, am I cool with the fact that I'm passing on something or not?
Right. And only you can make that decision.
Only you can stop forest fires.
All right. That's pretty much the show for this week. I hope the third time was the charm. I hope you got something out of it. Next week, we are going to be doing guests. Have we talked about guests yet?
Well, that's announcements. Okay, announcements. So we are starting to get some more guests lined up for you guys because as much as we love talking to you guys every single week, we figured you might enjoy hearing some of our friends, which is the whole purpose of this podcast. If you remember our intro, we share our experiences and friends with you that helped us grow. So these are some people that we think really have some good stuff for you guys.
Right. So next week is either going to be a guest or the podcast titled Quit Remembering. So you'll have to come back. Shut up. I know what you're doing. Stop it. You're going to have to come back next week to figure out what it was. So
what was the title again?
Be